Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. Well, not really a review, it's more just some general thoughts on the movie Logan. Now I know I'm pretty late to the party on this one, but just as a reminder, I live in Japan these days, and the movie didn't come out here until I guess it was about 2 weeks ago. I did go see it shortly after it opened, about 4 days later. Um, and I kind of had just sort of was really bad about getting around to doing a review of it, and then eventually I decided to just make it a general kind of some thoughts on things. But I just got to thinking, it's been a really long time since I uploaded anything, so probably should get something up just so people don't think I fell in a hole or something. Anyway, so I'm going to try and keep this pretty spoiler free. Although I will give you a little warning before I say anything really spoilery, and we'll save that sort of stuff for the end of the video. So let's just kind of get right into it. Now, all in all, I did like this movie. I liked it quite a bit. This is basically, okay, a pretty shameless cash grab by Fox because, the X-Men movies make tons of money, and that's part of the reason why it's going to be a very long time, if ever, before Marvel gets the rights to the X-Men back. But, c'est la vie. But mainly, money aside, this is just kind of a nice way of everybody having a chance to say goodbye to Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and Patrick Stewart as Professor X. The actors they're not getting any younger, and, it does make sense that they're just going to have to say goodbye to the roles eventually. And, it is very sad to see them go. Patrick Stewart was, for years, everybody's dream choice for Professor Xavier. The legendary miniseries Marvels. Artist Alex Ross actually used Patrick Stewart as the basis for Professor X in his cameo in that series. And, even as far back as the 90s, people were just kept saying if they ever do a live-action X-Men movie, Patrick Stewart has to be Professor X. And when that happened, oh man, it was just such a dream come true, and he did the role beautifully. And, of course, he had Ian McKellen to bounce off of, which, come on, it's Ian McKellen. But nonetheless, he was really just everything I think we could have wanted from Professor Xavier. And here he kind of got to stretch his comedic muscles a little bit more. People really do tend to forget what a hilarious guy Patrick Stewart can be. And so him, cursing and singing things from a Taco Bell commercial, that was great. That was beautiful. And of course, Hugh Jackman was a fantastic choice for Wolverine. Man, I still remember back when he was first cast, there were some people who were just absolutely flipping out because in real life, Hugh Jackman's a pretty tall guy, and there were people who were like, oh, well, Wolverine is a short, scrappy guy, and being short is integral to his character. And I'm like, I don't think Wolverine would be that different a guy if he was tall. And, here, Hugh Jackman totally proved that was true. Once the first X-Men movie came out, those people shut up pretty damn quick. And while not all of the movies in which he played Wolverine were terribly good, X-Men Origins, oh, that's terrible. You can't really lay that at Jackman's feet. If somebody writes a crummy script, well, even the best actor in the world can only do so much with it. But this was a really great send-off for Jackman as Wolverine. He really got to show the various sides of Wolverine's character. Him as a caring person, him as a callous person, the person who is caught with the great contrast of violence. Is that, violence is often a terrible thing that kills people, that harms people. And yet, it is sometimes through violence that good things come about. If we use violence to protect an innocent life, well, isn't that good? And, it's kind of nicely pointed out by the way they do reference the movie Shane in this film. It's, Shane's violence protects the homesteaders from the bad guys so that they can grow and build a worthwhile community. But without that violence, which is part of the reason why Shane just can't stay there, because he just can't leave that part of himself behind. It also, yeah, it's incompatible with the world they want to build. So, violence helps build that world, that better world, but it is necessary for that better world to exist. It's an extraordinary contradiction. And that's kind of one of the core things about Wolverine's character is that he's this guy who is no stranger to violence. He has killed God only knows how many people, and yet he does this in order to protect people, to do good in the world. Now, sometimes he does it just because he's really mad, but usually the people he's taking it out on are people who deserve it. So again, that really is nicely highlighted in this story, and we also get to see their take on Laura Kinney, aka X-23, which obviously there's quite a few differences between X-23 in the comics and what we get here in the movie, but the core of this character is the same. This young woman who is very much like Wolverine, but has the potential to find perhaps a more balanced life than he ever did. I still remember this one issue of X-Force that I read years ago, and Wolverine was about to go in and do some serious black ops and violence, and along for the ride were Warpath and Wolfsbane. And he says to them, like, look, you guys really don't want to go in there and do this. If we go in there and do this, you guys are going to have to kill some people, and you're going to have blood on your hands for the rest of your lives. And Warpath and Wolfsbane are like, no, we're totally doing this. And Wolverine's like, okay, suit yourself. I warned you, on your own heads be it. And, we do see some of that attitude here in this movie. I mean, Wolverine understands the price that violence takes on a person's soul. And it's not something that he would really want to wish on anyone else. But he's the kind of guy that respects other people's choices, even if those are bad choices. Now, of course, this movie also draws some inspiration from the Old Man Logan story written by Mark Millar, which I've read, and frankly, I didn't really enjoy that story very much. I'm not in any way opposed to sort of dark stories based on these sort of characters. I mean, they've done some really great stories there, but it just at times feels like sometimes when writers go down this road, and I've seen very talented writers do this. Warren Ellis has done it with Ruins. Mark Millar has done it more than once. Garth Ennis is the kind of guy who at times seems to absolutely revel in it. It's just taking, I hate to use the word idealism, but I suppose that free-spiritedness, yes, this is silly, but so what of it all? And that is kind of nature, a part of the nature of superhero storytelling, and just really seems to just delight in tossing it in the sewer, for lack of a better term. Now, it's probably perhaps no coincidence that the writers that I've mentioned, that I think when they do this it kind of bothers me, are respectively British and Irish. And I think perhaps just some sort of difference in attitudes that writers from different sides of the pond have in regards to these sort of things is perhaps more than a little at play. The British are very big on, as they say, taking the piss. And, okay, fair enough. God knows that there is certainly no end of silliness in superhero storytelling. But I suppose it just kind of gets to me when it feels like people are taking delight in well, okay, I guess there's no really fair way to put it, at poking at one of my sacred cows. So, again, this is probably just a little bit me being overly sensitive, but whatever. That's how I feel about the situation. And I really do hate to admit that, as I'm a person that is not really a believer in sacred cows, but, well, we're all hypocrites sometime anyway, right? But anyway, I've gotten horribly off topic. Getting back to Logan, I did really like that they really did not hold back on this movie in terms of the violence and the profanity. I mean, again, these are things that when you inject them into superhero storytelling, particularly mainstream characters, you have to be extraordinarily careful about. But they've never shied away from the fact that Wolverine leads a pretty violent life, and comics being what they are, they don't really usually do too much in the way of gore, but it's never very far away that Wolverine leaves a pretty bloody trail behind him. And well, as for the swearing, yeah, I mean the idea that Wolverine would be sort of someone who would be averse to harsh language is kind of ridiculous on multiple levels. One thing I really enjoy doing sometimes, but especially if I go back and read like old timey comics, like from the '60s and '70s and stuff, when characters weren't even allowed to say things like "damn" or anything like that, is just sort of mentally filling in how the sort of profanity that realistically people probably would have used in those situations. In a way, it's sometimes amusing because it's like, wow, if you kind of change this to how the way people would really speak, yeah, some characters become surprisingly foul-mouthed. I mean, I remember reading some old Avengers books from the '60s, and it was like, man, Hawkeye kind of swears a lot. But again, this is all just my personal weirdness. Anyway, the story overall in Logan is pretty bare bones and pretty simplistic, and that's fine. This is really more of what's going on with these people as characters, and Wolverine finding it in within himself to be a real hero one last time. And he does ultimately, oh surprise, surprise, he succeeds. It actually reminded me a little bit of the way all things ultimately pan out at the very end of the movie. With okay, I guess we need to stop here and have a quick little spoiler moment. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So of course, at the end of this movie, surprise, surprise, Logan dies. And it did remind me the way you went out, kind of the ending of a story called Wolverine: The End. And this was an alternate reality tale where it's basically like, okay, Wolverine is an old guy now, his hair's turned gray, his healing factor isn't what it used to be. And this tells the story of, his last great battle that ultimately ends with his death. And if you're curious, he is finally given his death blow when he gets hit by a whole bunch of missiles fired by an attack helicopter belonging to the Japanese military. Here, of course, he ultimately kind of dies from fighting, his own evil clone. This clone, X-24, who's basically everything that is the negative about his nature distilled down into one basically mindless being. The ultimate exemplar, the embodiment of the animal that Logan spent his entire life fighting to not become. And of course, it's probably no little coincidence that it's that adamantium bullet that puts this character down. So I did enjoy that. It was a very nice way of wrapping things up for the character. And the idea of these children might have a little bit more better future in Canada. Well, I think that seems overly optimistic, especially given what we know about the state of mutancy, and that, do you really think that somebody else isn't going to pick up on this whole, well, okay, let's just keep putting weird stuff in people's food so that no more mutants get born thing. Somebody's going to pick up that thing. But, it's movies, you want to give things a happy ending, right? So, let's see. What else do I need to say here? Oh yeah, Donald Pierce. I was kind of disappointed at. He felt like a very sort of unoriginal villain. Really, except for the fact that he was named Donald Pierce and was a cyborg, didn't really feel very much like the character from the comics. But then again, something like the Hellfire Club, it's not going to work in a film like this. So, okay. Not a bad take on the Reavers, but again, they just weren't super interesting to me. But then again, neither were the Reavers in the comics. In the comics, the only time I've honestly felt the Reavers were particularly interesting wasn't even when they were fighting the X-Men. It was actually when they were fighting the Punisher, simply because the Punisher seems like a guy who should stand no chance against the Reavers. Meanwhile, the X-Men, yeah, some cyborgs are going to be a challenge, but not that much of a challenge. The X-Men can handle this kind of thing. The Punisher, when he fought the Reavers, felt seriously in over his head, and it took everything he had to get out of that situation alive, and that's what made it an interesting story. But again, I'm rambling. Ultimately, this movie is just us saying goodbye, as I've said, to Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman as Professor X and Wolverine. It tells a very simple story, but one that is very rich in what it says about the characters in it. And what the comment that the movie makes about violence in our society and about the choices that we make and how they define us, those are worthy messages and interesting ideas to think about. And worthy messages and interesting ideas to think about. Well, when X-Men is at its best, that's kind of what it's doing, is putting those things out there for the reader. So, yeah, all in all, a very, very much recommended movie. And just a little kind of end note, when I went to see Guardians of the Galaxy several weeks ago here in Japan, they had a bunch of merchandise for sale in the lobby, and I picked up a few nice little odds and ends. And I was really excited to get to the theater, and I was thinking, like, okay, there's got to be something cool Logan-wise that they'll have here. They didn't have a thing. I was so disappointed. I mean, like, come on, not even like a mouse pad or anything like that. But then again, this isn't exactly sort of a kid-friendly merchandise movie. But all right, everybody. So I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi, and please also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. Until next time, take care and have a good one.